a lot of things happens when you walk into this traditional healing space and spiritual healing space. You're given all these kinds of rules that a traditional healer is not supposed to do this, a traditional healer is not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to wear black. A lot of people are probably thinking, why is she wearing black? I wear black. My dead people don't have a problem with me wearing black. And and I realized that when I was called to be a healer, I was cutting my hair. Oh, I was told that healers don't cut their hair. I'm like, but come on. I went into a trance without hair. So if my assistants were as petty as that, they wouldn't have come through. So the moment I want, I strove to be true to myself because I felt that these people had been in my life throughout my existence. And if there's a rule that I need to follow, then it must come from them. It must be them who come to me and say to me, Keketso, you're not supposed to do this. Keketso, we don't want this. Because I remember for about a period of 10 years, was not eating anything that came from the sea. Anything that came from the water, I was not eating fish. But I was surrounded by traditional healers who were eating fish. And I could not even stand the smell. And I'd be like, oh, you're eating fish? I'm like, yeah, I eat fish. I'm like, oh, I can't eat fish. It makes me sick. But they'd be like, no, but my ancestors don't have an issue with it. I'm like, okay. So that is where I learned that ancestors are not just one, universal being. They are, they're individuals. They are our parents who are assigned to guide us. Therefore, it means that we need to be very honest in our conversations with them, in connecting with them, because they are part of us. They know us better than we know ourselves. And the moment you stop listening to the world, because you get told so many things. You can't do this. You are not supposed to be like that. You're not supposed to talk like that. Traditional healers are a certain way. And I even get my clients asking me, how am I supposed to refer to you? I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine. And then there are moments when I have one of my sisters sitting on me, then Keketso feels very abrasive. And I'm like, nah, can we try Gogo? Gogo is fine. Like, Gogo is fine because you're not my client even. You're my sister's client. So let us honor them. So I think in all of that, the moment because I had suffered. I had stayed at my grandparents' house for 3 years with no job. I literally lived off the kindness of my friends. But the funny thing in all of that is that I had walk-in clients, which is not how I work. And in days where I'd be frustrated, let's say the previous night I was frustrated, crying, complaining to them. The next morning, they would bring in a client for a reading. And so I had those random clients walking in. So I think they had to find a way, to keep me alive, to help me not lose faith in all of this, to remember that I'm taken care of. And for the 3 years that I still stayed at my grandparents' house without a job on my own, I had friends giving me money. I remember this friend of mine, she called me one day, says, Kay, you don't work. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't work. I remember I had about 50 Rand, which is like, how much 50 Rand in pounds? It's not much. It's less than 20 pounds. Okay. It's like, oh, you don't have a job. I'm like, no, I don't have a job. Like, I'm going to send you money. And she sent me money. That is how I lived. That is how I lived. I lived off the kindness of people in my life and of the kindness of my ancestors. I always tell people that if there's anyone who lives from grace, ancestral grace, it's me. I don't have a job. I have not worked for the past 9 years, actually, but I still travel. Every year I travel. And all my, yes, and all my needs are taken care of. And you know how I get to travel? I give them the days. I tell them that I want to travel on this date, and you guys are going to make sure that I have the money to travel. It's important. I have a conversation with them, and I tell them that when I don't have money for groceries or food, I tell them we should not. I go in there and I tell them we should not be having this conversation. It is your responsibility to make sure that I have food, I have clothes. So let us not, and I say that to them, let us not have this conversation about me having food. Please make sure that I always have food. and they do. And I negotiate my travels. I've sat down with them and I told them that, guys, your work is hard. And I'm a terrible, terrible empath. As I was telling you, I get sick. If a person thinks about me, I will get sick. If you're thinking of coming to see me a week earlier, I will be feeling everything that you feel a week for a week. So you can imagine how heavy this work is for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I've sat down with them and I told them that I need a month every year so that I can go away and focus on myself and heal myself. And I'll tell them from the onset that this is the amount of money, this is where I want to go. And believe you me, sometimes I get the money a day before I'm meant to be leaving. That is how this is works. This is how it works. So so you see how I'm living off my ancestors.
I see.
It's
I see.
purely that. They take care of me and I take care of them.
Beautiful.
So yeah,
Beautiful. So I was just going to say to you, I love the relationship you have with your ancestors. That is genius. Everybody in the comment section is just cracking up because the way you described that was truly phenomenal. I love it. I love it. But you also mentioned that you do a lot of healing work. And I just wanted for you to elaborate on the type of works that you do. What type of thing will a client come to you and say they need assistance with? What type of things do you do?
mostly, strangely, because I do not want to, which is also strange. A friend of mine says I'm running away from my calling to be a teacher, to be an initiator. And I always tell her that no, people need to own their journeys. That it's not my responsibility to shape and define them. I can be a conduit. You can come to me and say that this is what they have asked you to help me with. I do not want to take charge of someone's journey. So most of my clients are people who have a calling,
Mm-hmm.
and mostly and a lot of them, oh my god, I do heavy work. I do very heavy work. I do. I wish I had, I always say to my friends that I wish I had, I work with babies, like very very light work. I do possessions, people possessed by dark spirits and stuff, which is quite heavy work. It's not
How
fancy
common
enough.
is that, by the way? Is that quite a common thing that you get? The
Yes,
possessions?
for me it's quite common. For me it's predominantly the kind of work I do. It's removing the dark spirits and all sorts of rubbish things, and then also helping people clear up their path with their ancestors and the connection. That is mostly the work that I do. I wish I had other fancy work. But that is the work that I do, and which also makes me realize that we all have specialities. Healers have specialities. I mean that we have midwives. We have also the one of the work that I do a lot is counseling. I think it probably comes from the fact that I studied psychology, but
Mm-hmm.
I mostly get people who are not. I always tell people whenever I'm shopping for herbs, and they'd be like, "Don't you want something that cleanses the blood? Don't you want something for certain ailments?" I'm like, "No, I don't work with that." Because mostly my clients are people who are spiritually ill, people who are psychologically ill.
Okay.
Most of my work I do, my readings take up 3 hours. People walk in and we do the readings and we sit there and we just talk. We just talk. That is mostly the work that I do. So it's people with gifts, people who are possessed. Yeah.
And now, out of curiosity, how do you do your readings? What technique do you use to read people?
Honestly, I how do I read people? Whew. If there's anything that I remember when I initiated the first time, and then the woman who initiated me, she was like, because she would give me bones, and I would do the incantations, invoke ancestors and stuff, and then throw the bones, and I would not even look at them. And then I would start telling people, this is what you go through. I think I'm mostly an empath as well, and sometimes a channeler, actually,
Mm-hmm.
a seer, because I see most of the stuff I feel, I see, and on a good day, I hear. My bones, honestly, I do have a bag of bones that I throw, which is mostly to ask specific questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not good with bones. That I admit. I'm not good with bones. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not at all. I do have a bag of bones. Once in a while, they add a few things. I was told to add dice. I'm still thinking about buying because I had small. Now they want huge. So I'd probably maybe at some point they would decide that they don't want the rest of the bones, that I must only use dyes. So we don't know.
Yeah.
It changes. That is a thing with my gifts, actually. That a friend of mine always says that I'm not even using 50% of my gifts yet, because it's still unraveling. Every year there's something coming up. There's a lot of work. As I was telling you, that I'm doing a lot of work healing ancestors and cleansing ancestors and helping them transition, because that's what I realized, that it's probably also my journey. This is one of my callings, because I've been doing the work for a year. I was actually telling a client that I started cleansing my ancestors a year ago, and it never stops. Hey, when I think I'm done and more come, they need cleansing, that I need to do rituals, and I cleanse them and I release them.